Welcome to another edition of the Stay True podcast, being brought to you by T.R.U.E Coaching. And T.R.U.E stands for Triumph Requires Unlimited Effort. I'm your host today. I'm Lamont with my guy, my homeboy, Mr. and Dr. Dwayne Smith. How's it going, sir?
It's going good, brother. Nice to be on the show.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Smith. I know you're busy. So what I want to start this conversation with is with an introduction of who Dr. Smith is. So we're going to start there.
Okay, but again, thanks a lot for allowing me to be here. I always start my narrative by my origin. You know, I'm just a black boy from the west side of St. Louis, Missouri, who grew up on the Holman tracks and was able to do this incredible work because of faith in God first and foremost, but some incredible ancestors and incredible elders, a credible mother, and an incredible brother. We can trace our lineage from in this country to 1820. That's when my great grandmother, Lottie Smith, was born. And to put it in perspective, the country is only about 21 years old, 24 years old. George Washington only been dead for 22 years. Abraham Lincoln was only 11 years old, and there were only 23 states in the country. And so the reason I share that is I claim right to this country. And even though the country did not do right by my family, you know, we were enslaved. And even after slavery, liberation, there was still Jim Crow. There was segregation, there was oppression, but yet we thrive to be the successful people as we are. So that's really my introduction. I have more to say, but I'll stop right there.
No, that was powerful, brother. Again, you listen to the Stay True podcast, being brought to you by T.R.U.E Coaching, where triumph requires unlimited effort. And we have Dr. Dwayne Smith. So Dr. Smith, it seems, and very rightfully so, you have a lot of pride and a lot of, you have a very strong lineage. How does that, again, because I want to make sure we bring that out, man. How does that drive, how does that add to your drive?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I frame it from this perspective. So, you know, so we start off at 1820, and my grandfather and my grandmother on my mother's side, they were born in 1891, 1892, respectively. And one thing I was interested about my grandfather is that he was literate. And so, which is, during that time period, African Americans were not. And the majority of African Americans, probably about over 80% or 90% of African Americans could not read or write at the turn of the 20th century. But my grandfather was literate. One of the things also that was really powerful is that he was a sharecropper. And, you know, you understand the historical context that after African Americans were emancipated, so to speak, they didn't have any property. They didn't get the 40 acres and a mule. And so a lot of them did sharecropping. So basically they tilled the soil for the former white slave owners, and then they got a cut of the pie. But usually what happened is there was a lot of theft of wages. And so it was a perpetual cycle where these sharecroppers always was in debt to the white landowner. But what I know about my grandfather, he was never in debt. So matter of fact, one of the things that my mother used to say is that after they tilled the soil and did the crops, and there was 10 of them, they got $100 a piece, which was really profound. $100 back then was a lot, you know. I didn't think much of it until I kind of understand why the Great Migration happened, because many African Americans felt that they just kept getting cheated, but my forefathers did not. But the one thing that was really interesting about that is that my mother grew up in a small town called T.R.U.E, Mississippi. And T.R.U.E, Mississippi was in the Delta of Mississippi, the bastion of Jim Crow. And the white school board decided the blacks didn't need the 12th grade. And so they eliminated the 12th grade for African Americans. The white schools had it, but the African Americans didn't. But my mother believed so much in education that she finished the 11th grade twice. And so when she migrated as part of the Great Migration, she came to St. Louis really uneducated. She consoled, but she didn't have the educational background, we wound up being very, 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 I could add a lot of varies on this poorness, but she was adamant about us getting an education that we combined of us, we have the 7 of us, we have over 10 college degrees. 10 college degrees. And my brother was the first Smith from that lineage that earned a college degree in 150 years. So in 150 years from the time we can trace Lottie Smith, he was the first Smith to earn a degree. And so of course I have cousins and relatives with all types of degrees, medical degrees, law degrees, but my brother set it off. And then I would say that it was 185 years later that I was the first Smith to earn a PhD. 185 years later. And so I remember this story. I'm gonna be quick about it. I worked at this university. And when I was hired, the president was good. She was saying, I'm glad you're here. You have your PhD because not too many people in upper administration had their PhD. So I have a habit, even now, I say, my name is Dr. Dwayne Smith. So at some particular meeting, I don't recall the meeting, but it got back to me from my supervisor who said, the president thought I was arrogant because I introduced myself as Dr. Dwayne Smith, and I was kind of puzzled by that because when I got hired, she thought it was a great thing, that I was really the only African-American that in upper administration that had a PhD, and most of even the whites didn't have it. And I thought about it, and I think about the journey, in 1820, when my ancestors came to this country, they didn't have education. And they was denied education opportunities. And 185 years later, through oppression, depression, Jim Crow, segregation, 185 years later, I earned a PhD. So I would say I have every right to call myself Dr. Smith. I will always call myself Dr. Smith. And I encourage other people who have worked hard to earn any type of credential to honor their ancestors by doing that. So I honor my ancestors oftentimes by remembering the struggle and the journey.
Again, you're listening to the Stay True podcast being brought to you by T.R.U.E Coaching, where triumph requires unlimited effort. So, Dr. Smith, when I listen to people tell their story a lot of times, and whether it be good or bad, but more so when it's bad, they're stuck. And then a lot of times they're stuck in a background that was impoverished. And you said yourself you was from an impoverished background. How do you keep that from like chaining your ankles, especially as a young person? So go back just a little bit. As a young person, how did you find a way to keep yourself motivated and not allowing your environment to chain you?
So that's always an interesting question because I really didn't quite understand it until later in life. And I look at the mechanisms, the kind of the coping mechanism that really I was embarrassed by, but I realized they were coping mechanisms. For instance, I remember when I was about 9 or 10 and we lived in this home. I mean, it was really not fit for human, it was not fit. It was really, we had boards to board up the windows and, it didn't have heat. I mean, in that time period, we used a trash can as a refrigerator because we didn't have a working refrigerator, all those different things. But I remember in the summer, and it was scorching hot, and so it was so hot that you couldn't sleep. And so we were all packed up in like 2 rooms. And I would get up in the middle of the night and I would rock, and I would almost kind of devour myself going in flight to another place. And the only thing I knew really of places were like TV. We rarely had TV because our TV was broken. But I remember the Beverly Hillbillies, right? And I remember the first part of the Beverly, they lived in a big mansion, right? And then I remember Leave It to Beaver inside their house. And I would merge the two. I would live in a big house, and it was almost, it was a way for me to disconnect myself from the trauma of poverty. And I would literally be up in the middle of the night for like maybe a couple of hours, just rocking and thinking about better times. And so one of the things I realized is I never internalized the struggle. I didn't know that then. And even matter of fact, when I would rock, my brother used to make fun of my older brother, said, stop all that rocking. I mean, and we were rock and bump, and I would just kind of go into this third dimension, if you will. And so I found that one, I never internalized it. I mean, it was really, I mean, even the bullying, just negative commentation, that sort of thing. I never ever internalized. I never internalized blackness as a negativity. I never internalized that this is going to be my life. I never. That's the thing. You can't internalize it. The other piece about it is it's really a good news story. So I guess if I would have wound up being a derelict or not something negative, it would be a terrible story. But the powerful story is that I was able to triumph, and even to this day, I have a picture of that house we grew up in. And it's a reminder. I have it in my office, and so whenever I do my presentations, regardless of where I go, I say this is where I grew up, because people can't imagine that in me, to be a CEO of an institution, that this is the thing that happens. So I don't let it. I don't care as baggage. And really what happens is when we unpack our lives and not coming from a perspective of shame, because that's really what kills the spirit, this shame, this embarrassment. And I remember a lot of things that I looked upon as shame. I'm saying, wow, this is empowerment. So one example, so I really didn't play organized team sports, right? But these girls in the 8th grade, they said, Dwayne, you should play football when you go to school, high school. And these guys got mad because I guess they figured, why are they telling him, say, jump me, right? And so I wanted to play in football, but I really wasn't good at it, but it was like one of the biggest challenges. So I remember my freshman year going looking at football films. And it was embarrassing. I'm saying, who looks at football films, right? I'm like 13, 14-year-old looking at film to get better, right? And so as I unpack, I say, that's how has always been my way I operate. How do I get better? So even at that age, I'm 13, 14, said, okay, if I look at the tapes, take notes, I can get better. But for a long time, I was embarrassed by it because people didn't, people either had some innate ability, they just didn't do that. But guess what happens? The greatest athletes, the greatest people look at tapes. They look at tapes as other people. And so if I would have kept that buried, I wouldn't understand the greatness that I had, even though I was going through a struggle.
So if you could for me, and you talked about, and I love the fact that you didn't hack certain aspects of the environment as you matriculated through your life. And a lot of people do, they take that baggage and then they don't realize that they didn't leave home at home sometimes, and it holds them back sometimes. But what I want to know from you, because this, and I ask this question a lot, is give your definition of passion versus purpose, and how whichever one applies to your life.
Um, Again, that's I wouldn't say it's a tricky question, but your purpose will give you passion. And so when you discover your purpose, what is your divine purpose? It motivates you to do what you need to do. So for instance, today was a busy day. So my story is that I basically, and that's something I want to discuss in this program. I actually am the CEO of Housatonic Community College here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And my purpose is that I need to provide opportunity and access for under-resourced individuals and communities. That's really what it is. So because I know I understand my purpose, my passion is how do I manifest that? So there's an opportunity that exists here. And so I talked with a gentleman yesterday, I just met him. And I said, I know this is really short, but can we meet on Saturday? He said, well, okay, you know what? I'll do it for you. If we can meet early morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, on Saturday morning, that's how I do it. And I was excited. It wasn't, man, I'm giving my Saturday morning for this. I got there before he got there. I got there before everybody got there. And I had to travel a great distance to get to this location. And so for me, that's the passionate part, that if you don't have a purpose, you'll start grumbling and mumbling towards your destiny. And oftentimes you won't get it because you get discouraged in the process. So I would say that's really for me, you have to have your purpose first, and that purpose is going to drive that passion.
Mm. And how would you and how would you encourage people, or actually, because I know, I mean, it's obvious that you have a gift to educate. How would you educate people to how to discover their purpose?
I think sometimes it's trial and error. I think also what happens, people think that if you have a purpose, it's going to be easy to manifest. And if it's not easy to manifest, then that's not really where God has placed you or whatever. And I find my breakthrough comes in the valley, And so when I realized this is what my purpose is, you assume that everybody's going to be happy for that, but not everybody's going to join in on your purpose. And so I found a lot of disappointments along the road. The one thing I had to fight against was discouragement, to say, perhaps this is not what I'm supposed to do. Maybe because things are not working out well, maybe because whatever the situation. And so if you could fight for that thing, right? If you could push through to that thing, if you could come on the other side of this thing in spite of the difficulties, in spite of the disappointments, I would say you found your purpose. And the more that you get into that thing, that's where you're going to get your passion. And so I think that I don't judge my purpose by the efficacy of things that's going on now. Right now I'm flying, but I just remember times where in my career having to get on food stamps, with a PhD, having to work work in a cave, because things just didn't go right. And if I were to judge whether this is my purpose based on what I see my reality, I would have given up, because I say, man, this is not worth it. This is maybe I made a mistake. And that's the thing. Most people, they get discouraged because things don't go the right way. And I say, anything you can remember, what I said is that the breakthrough happens in the valley. It doesn't happen on the mountaintop. It happens in the valley when we kind of say, aha, I got it. And I'm going to, as my pastor used to say, through hell or high water, I'm going to make this thing happen.
Mm. So, Dwayne, just a little bit more on the part about, you're talking about the food stamps with a PhD, working in a cave. What were some both maybe tangibles and intangibles that kept you going?
So just to kind of give you a little bit about my professional life. So I started in higher education as an active. I was really into a lot of things on my campus, and that's really when I found out my purpose. I'm a leader. So again, go back years ago, grade school was not really considered. I mean, I was just kind of middle of the road. I always kind of felt I had something to offer, but there were always that's always someone that's something in front of that. But everything kind of came together my freshman year. I wasn't the greatest student, but I was this greatest leader. I mean, people just really respected me. And so basically, that is what I was hired to do, my first job. And I loved it so much that I remember saying that if I died tomorrow, I'd be completely satisfied. There was a friend of mine who he was so upset by it because he thought I had so much potential. But, I was doing what I loved, but then all of a sudden I got kind of dissatisfied with it. And I felt that if I didn't move, I would die doing this thing. So something I loved, I started to loathe. And so I made a hard left and left this position. I didn't have another position. I just said, it's time for me to move on. God speaking to me saying, it's time for you to move on. So I actually moved on, and things started working well until it didn't. And I remember being discouraged, and the discouragement is the one that can chop off any type of opportunity. And I remember sitting there feeling sorry, and I said, I shouldn't have left my job. And it was like God reminded me, and this is kind of from a spiritual perspective, it was like, a man who keeps his eye off the plow is not fit to be my servant. That's kind of a take on the scripture where Jesus is asking people, will you follow me? And they're giving all kind of reasons why they can't follow him at the moment. He's like, a man who looks back to the plow is not fit to be my servant. And that's one of the old Negro spirituals. Keep your hand on the plow. The plow kind of steadies you. The plow kind of unearths things, right? So if you move away from the plow, you can go in all kinds of directions, right? And so from that point on, I said, I will never have a spirit of complaint. I'll never look back, no matter how difficult it becomes. I'm not going to look back. And I had to do that because it got far worse before it got better. So all of a sudden now I was in positions where I was handling multi-million-dollar budgets, and I had dozens upon dozens people to report to me, and I had nice offices, and all of a sudden it disappeared, and I'm working now in a cave, and I had basically a woman who could be my daughter, my supervisor, and I just remember going to that place, and people just really they had a kind of a dour attitude, and I would come there smiling. And they would say, "What you smiling about?" And I'm thinking, you know what I've gone through, and I'm here smiling. And here I am in this job. I think it was paying a little bit over $10 an hour. And I would come in smiling. But then what was happening though, it was really preparing me for that next level. And the next level was the best level I could have had. And then the rest is history, So it's just really, I think again, that people, they define their success if they're moving in the right direction by the mountaintop experiences, and that's not how you get it. You think about anyone who has struggled to break through. Tyler Perry talks about being homeless for, I think, 7 years, and then having all these different types of plays that never did break through, giving up all this stuff, you look about the stories of people that the breakthrough was kind of right around the corner. Now you see the end of it and you say, wow, but there was a lot of things you have to go through to get to that breakthrough moment. And it's not, again, when you kind of finally make it, it's really through those struggles and those tests of your faith.
So if you could, Dr. Smith, because I want to, come back a little bit later, but if you could, there's somebody going through a valley possibly right now, because you mentioned valley a couple of times. If somebody may be going through a valley right now, can you just provide a little bit of encouragement to somebody who's going through that valley?
So really, you have to envision yourself at a certain place. So when I go back to my growing up, and I always kind of go back to that feeds me, that gives me power and authority. I don't negate it, I don't reject it. But I just remember being a little kid, just envisioning myself at a certain space, and it manifested. So it wasn't that it manifested overnight. I mean, it just kind of was a journey, but I was always this one in terms of envisioning the outcome, right? Envision the outcome first, and that's enough to propel you. So really what happens is that's what faith is all about. Faith is the things that are unseen. And oftentimes our reality really describes, almost our fate. We kind of see that, I'll never get that job. I'll never get that relationship. I'll never, whatever. And it's just really kind of pouring salt into a wound. It's like it's pouring poison to your spirit, And so my thing, the first thing you have to just think differently. Now, there's mental illness out there, so it's not a matter of if you got some mental depression, just thinking differently is not going to do it. You need to kind of take some action. But we're talking about just some basic things of being discouraged because it seems like you've always kind of tried to do things. I'm saying that's the first thing, really. That's what I do. Even now, I have a project that I'm trying to put together, and I'm envisioning how it's going to look. I'm envisioning the days of the activity. I mean, I get excited by that, And the only thing I'm looking at is just a shell of a vision. And so that's really the first thing. Really, that's it, of anything that I can give as advice regarding that question, that comment.
Again, you're listening to the Stay True podcast being brought to you by T.R.U.E Coaching, where triumph requires unlimited effort. So I like to play this little word game, Dr. Smith. And so I throw a word out and you let me know what comes to mind first. So I'm gonna throw a couple.
I gotta do one word.
I'm gonna throw you one word and you you give me your take on that word.
Oh, okay.
So first thing we're gonna throw out is hope.
What was the word again?
Hope.
Hope?
Yeah.
Hope. Hope is motivation to do better. Hope is the notion that this is not going to last always. This too shall pass.
You use the word discouragement. What comes to mind when you say that?
Poison, um, um, negativity, hopelessness, um, um, defeat. Yeah.
Poverty.
Um, it could be coming from different spaces. It could be poverty of the spirit. And I think that's what we lack. We have a poverty of the spirit in this country that we don't embrace. We don't look to lift others up. We're in for it for ourselves. Um, and that's a terrible poverty. It's beyond the poverty of like the physical poverty. There could be poverty of the mind that you feel that you don't have. And so people who really have a lot is kind of is a distorted view of life where they believe that somehow or another they don't have it, somebody's taking it from it. I'm not going to the political aspect of it, but that's what a lot of the clash is now because we have a poverty of the mind. The worst poverty can be of the mind of those who don't have, because people who have it, I mean, it's really a facade. So if you think that you don't have anything, but you have a big house, you have, you have money. The only thing, I mean, it has ramifications in terms of how you treat other people and how you kind of maneuver. But if you have true physical poverty and then poverty of mind, it just makes it very difficult to move forward. So that's that word. I spent a little bit of time on that one.
Very good. So let's go family.
Oh, family is connection. Family is different. Family is diverse. Um, there's a um, there's a woman in St. Louis that she used to say. I don't think she coined it, but she says it. She said, "Not all skin folk are kinfolk. Not all skin folk are kinfolk." And I said, "Yeah." And so what that means is that all kind of people could be your family. You know, you know, in the Black community, we have all kind of euphemisms. We have play cousins, play aunts, godmothers, godfathers. I have like about 3 or 4 mothers who are my godmother. They said, "You're my godson." They say that. So that's what family is all about.
I like it. Two more words. Let's go healing.
Oh, healing. Healing is beneficial. Healing is critical to move forward. Healing is a sob. Healing is relaxing. Healing is joyous. Healing is liberation. And healing is freedom.
Mm. Now triumph.
Triumph. Triumph is victory. Uh, Triumph is being an overcomer. Triumph is breakthrough. Yeah.
So I mean, people use this question line of this one particular line of question a lot, but I think it's apropos to use it now. If let's go back in various phases of who you still you are, but were. Let's go back to the phase of the the young man that was in the house that you said really wasn't that livable. Let's go back to a phase where maybe college, and let's go back to a phase where you was in the cave and speak to each phase of you.
So, one piece that I didn't really share much, a lot about, I talk about now a lot about my brother, and my father really wasn't around, and my brother was the one who kind of set the stage for everything. And so he was part of each level of my existence. So my brother, again, as I say, he was the first Smith to graduate from college, but one of the things he used to do, he was always about family, right? So he would go shovel snow and he'll bring my mother half the money. So the expectation then became is regardless of what we did, whether it be a student loan, we're gonna give half to our mother, right? And so what he did, which was very profound, is that when he graduated, he was in ROTC, so he was commissioned second lieutenant, and so he would send my mother half his paycheck. And that first part was the first part that kind of ushered us out, not totally out of poverty, but we had food at the end of the month. One of the biggest, uh, uh, I would say the biggest fears is like not having food. Food is, they call it food insecurity now, but it was like you just go hungry. And so he did that. And I remember years ago, just recently, he just said, the reason why I went to Korea was I knew that I could live on 600. His paycheck was $600 a month. He sent her 300. He said I could live on $300 a month. And, heck, the welfare check was only $250, something like that. And then what he did 4 years later, he bought my mother a brand new house. A brand new, so it wasn't a matter of, okay, we grew up in poverty. That's when we found, it was like an official, like, we can have people over our house. I mean, we were like the Beverly Hillbillies for real. We had a dishwasher, didn't know how to use it. We put dishwashing liquid, how you use to wash it manually, and there was suds everywhere. And they were like, my brother, like, the dishwasher is broke. I'm like, the dishwasher is broke. And I said, no, you're not supposed to use that kind of stuff, and going to, literally a brand new house that we were the first one, had carpet and had all kind of things. And so for me, it was profound that he didn't leave us, he didn't forget about us. And so that just set the standard for everything that I did. So he went to community college. Before he went to college, my sister went to community college, and that allowed her to graduate. She graduated from University of Missouri Columbia in 3.5 years. 3.5 years. When it was taking people it was taking people 5, 6, 7, and sometimes 8 years. She did it in 3.5 years, and went on to law school and was a top-ranked student. I went to community college too. My brother, we went to the community college, so he set the standard for everything that we did. And I think about, like, what would happen if he would have went contrary. So it's not just a matter of, okay, the elders, it's just the people in your family, and each of those things that you cited from being in that house. And the ironic thing about it, when I talk about this often to my brother, and he knows how I feel, I sent him a long letter, just said, hey, I'm just really in awe of you, and I am me because of you. And so one of the things I talk about, and I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm like, I don't want for him to die, and then I'm at his funeral talking about this stuff, how much I said I'm gonna do that now. So I do it often to other people, but I did it to him. But we talked more, and he doesn't remember a lot of this stuff. I guess, I don't know. I said, I know it happened, like the house where, we had the trash can. He was a little bit older, but he was still a teenager. But I guess it impacted him differently. He said, I don't remember that. I'm like, wow, you remember that? But one thing he did remember is that music was always central. And we talk about, like, healing. The music was healing. And he would get 45 singles every week from Woolworths. And that was kind of like the highlights, And so we laugh about that. But for the most part, my trajectory and my journey, I would give it up to my oldest brother, who set the standard for all of us.
Mm, I appreciate that. So again, you listen to the Stay True podcast, being brought to you by True Beast Coaching, where triumph requires unlimited effort. We have Dr. Dwayne Smith on, some very profound moments of life that and I appreciate you presenting. What I would like to do at this particular moment, I'm gonna give you the floor, and I want you to speak life into someone. Like, I know you do an extraordinary job because I've heard you countless times, but I'm gonna give you a few like maybe 30 seconds to a minute to go ahead and speak life into someone.
Well, I think the main thing really is that you just have to believe in the efficacy of who you are. And self-efficacy is just the belief that you can do something, that you can believe it. And oftentimes we just have to encourage ourselves. We have to point to ourselves, and that's really because being so disconnected, poverty does a number on you. And I would say this, that the blessing is I was able to heal from that. So people think, and I'm gonna get to the what you just asked me to do, but I think it's important to note that we all have scars because of our experiences. And I think for us, because we were so successful, I mean, all of us, us meaning my family, it's just this amazing story, to have this. But we all have scars, and I'm not here to tell the scars of my brothers or sisters, but I had a lot of scars I had to get over because not having lack, not having things, and being brushed aside and being diminished. those sort of things. But what I found is that I had to always encourage myself, and even as a professional, I'm not going to always get the support, but I got to always tell myself I'm valuable, I'm worth it. It's called self-talk. I actually read a lot of books on self-talk. Like what are you going to give yourself? What are you going to feed yourself in the morning? Like some people, they say a hearty breakfast is fresh fruit and this kind of thing, and some people just say I'm gonna get a bag of potato chips and a soda and call it a day. They're gonna feed themselves junk. So when you get up in the morning, what you gonna do? What you gonna say? I first start with a day of gratitude. I thank my higher power for waking me up. I'm thankful for just being alive. I'm thankful for another opportunity to serve. I'm thankful. I'm in a posture of thankfulness and gratitude. That's the first thing, no matter what. Whatever state we're in, we got to do that, because what happens is it allows a lot of positive energy to flow. The other piece is really my request. What do I want to do? My requests are that I want to be able to shape and move and change, that sort of thing. And then the third thing is like just please for other people, help this person, help my daughters, help my son, allow me to be more understanding, that sort of thing. And so those are simple things. I mean, so it's not like I'm gonna give them somebody this recipe for success. It's just basic things. Encourage yourself, inspire yourself, and no matter what, it's an internal thing, right? There's a such thing as internal locus of control and external locus of control. Those who have a high level of internal locus of control are more likely to be successful versus those who have a high external. The external environment dictates where you're going to go. And I think when I look at, I didn't know how to label this stuff, right? When I was kind of coming through, but I realized I always had this internal locus of control that if I need to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to share this last story, this quick story. So I always kind of had this narrative about myself, about I had a struggle, and so recently we've had these like reunions. So we had a reunion of our 40th anniversary of us winning the city championship, and so we're talking about these are like superstar brothers who went off to Division I, Division II. A couple of people went pro, and here I am kind of doing my thing, So this one guy who was really a superstar back then, he's just doing basic work now. He said, Dwayne, how did you become so successful? I mean, he was really kind of asked a question. So I started this whole thing, I was very ordinary. And he said, man, you wasn't ordinary. I was thinking from a perspective that I wasn't a superstar in sports. And he said, you were the only one who had a car. I said, yeah. And then I start unpacking it, right? So basically, I wanted to play football, but I had to work. And I said, what do I need to do? So I said, okay, I need to learn how to drive. I didn't have a father to teach me how to drive. So I went to the Yellow Pages, right? And looked up Apex Driving School. And this old white guy, had to be about 70, 80 years old, pulled up in the hood. With Apex Driving School, how corny is that? But that's how I learned how to drive. Then I caught the bus to go look for cars. I didn't have my father go like, let's go look for cars. My aunt helped me. I said, can you co-sign for me? I'm like 16 years old doing all this stuff. Then I'm calling insurance. I'm calling insurance to get my insurance. And so I'm working in the evenings and I'm paying a car note and I'm paying insurance at age 16. I just turned from, and so when the guy says that, it just said, okay, you know what? Sometimes I got to get poked into like a reality of that I'm sharper than I even thought, And so I think that's the thing that we have to understand. We're sharper than we think.
That's awesome. Again, you've been listening to the Stay True podcast, being brought to you by T.R.U.E Coaching, where triumph requires unlimited effort. Dr. Smith, thank you so much for your time.
Oh yeah, this has been great. Anytime.
I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you. So again, this is Stay True Podcast. Follow us on all our social media outlets. You want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. So again, this is your Stay True podcast being brought to you by T.R.U.E Coaching.